you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, I'd like to give you a kind of whirlwind tour of the last several years of my work with people who are in what I call their wisdom years. I'm now 76 years old, but when I hit approximately 60, I realized that things were changing. And I started, like most people who are academically inclined, I started looking for books. And I found many books on aging, but not very many that taught me what the potential and possibilities were. There were a lot of specifics and a lot of facts about aging, but I really wanted to know, how do I do it? How do I age well? And what does that even mean? So I decided I was going to write a book. I saw that there were books on all sorts of self-help kinds of things, but nothing on aging that really spoke to me. Let me read you the introduction to the book, and it'll help orient where we're going today. Some of the most profound growth of our lives can happen in the home stretch, the years after 60 or so. It's a time when we can finally crystallize the meaning of what we've been and done and fully expand into the self we've always intended to be. But that can only happen if we first loosen the grip of the life we've led so far, the one that's been focused externally, outwardly, on activity, achievement, and the idea of success. And if we let our souls lead the way. In our wisdom years, I tried to guide people through 9 tasks that can transform the struggles of aging, bringing fulfillment, joy, and serenity. Drawing on the understandings that come from many years of work with people, I tried to distill the truths that undergird what aging really means when people are most fulfilled. I tried to share how we can gracefully let go of the younger selves we've been and walk towards this soul-driven version of later life. I try to encourage people to take the risk of being fully alive as the years pass. That's no small task. Aging is not for the faint of heart. The beautiful paradox of growing older is that none of the gifts of age are available without the kind of loss that forces us to confront mortality in a way that we can't deny. In the face of loss, in the face of our own mortality, yours and mine, we're changed and expanded by truths that come from the heart, not the mind. We learn that we're more than our bodies, that we're part of something larger than we are, and that love and kindness matter most of all. That's just a synopsis of where I've been, but I'd like to go much more deeply. I wrote out some questions and then tried to answer them. And I think the questions summarize not only what's in the book and where I've been the last few years of looking at what aging is really about, but to try to get at what it means to age in a way that allows for joy, fulfillment, resilience, and even, believe it or not, no regrets. The first question I'd like to pose is, why does some of the most profound growth of our lives happen after age 60? Well, after 60, there begins a new stage after adulthood that I call our wisdom years. And if there's one thing I say that's most important, I say this both as a psychologist and also as an older person. Imagine if when you were an adolescent, all those years ago, when you were a teenager, nobody told you about adulthood. You had no idea that there was another stage after adolescence. And so when you hit your 20s and you went through your 20s and your 30s, all you knew was what the priorities and desires of being an adolescent were. Nobody told you there was another stage. That's exactly the situation we face as we age. Nobody has told us that after adulthood comes another stage of life, a fundamentally different one. This wasn't true years ago. In our parents' generation, certainly our grandparents' generation, the basic theme was something like, well, you work until you're 65, or you raise a family and then they leave. And then you have a few more years left if you're lucky. And then it's over. But now the fastest growing segment of the population are centenarians, people over 100. So if you're 60, you could have 40 more years, no guarantee, obviously, but you could have 40 more years in which to live. An entirely new stage with different of human development, with different priorities and different potential, much different than adulthood. After age 60, as I said, there begins a new stage, and that new stage is as important and substantial as the transition from adolescence to adulthood. It has as much potential for growth as well. Fulfillment matters more than success. Fulfillment matters more than success. And although there's an increasing awareness of a limited lifespan after the age of 60, there's also the reality, as I said, that the fastest growing segment of the population are those over 100. Therefore, there may be as long as 40 years where there are two most vital growth lessons as we review our lives. Two questions to ask that you might want to take away. And I have lots of questions, but these two are really fundamentally at the core of everything I say. Who do we truly love, and who truly loves us? And second, what work have we done that's made a positive difference in the lives of others? Love and work. Who do we love, and who truly loves us? And what work have we done that's made a difference in the lives of others? And I don't mean this has to be dramatic, but we have to answer the questions in our wisdom years about love and work. Questions we perhaps were too busy to ask when we were busy with success and climbing the ladder and trying to raise a family and do all sorts of things that were appropriate to adulthood. Second question I'd like to pose. How can we find our most meaningful sense of direction in our later years? First, what I suggest in the book is visualize a time in the past when what you did was most fulfilling and meaningful, but perhaps incomplete. I'll give you a story that I think is illustrative. My parents met many, many years ago in an acting class after high school. My father was the lead man and the lead actor, and he was very good at it. He had a natural talent for acting. And he wanted to be an actor, but it was the Depression, it was the Great Depression. Acting wasn't a really good choice if you wanted to put food on the table. So he decided to go into sales. I asked him years later, why'd you pick sales? He said it was as close to acting as I could get. Interestingly enough, he stayed in that career for over 40 years. And when I asked him, did you ever think of acting all those years? Whatever became of your former love? And he said, I thought about it every day. Well, within a few weeks of his retirement, he joined an acting troupe. Acted in a number of plays, became the leading man again, and resumed a mission, an activity, a first love that was awfully important to him. Go back to a time in your past when something called to you. You may have started it, you may not have, you may have just thought about it. But what lies incomplete in your life that you might complete now? Something that has emotional and spiritual. Now, second, in finding a direction in later life is visualize a time 5 years from now and ask yourself, what direction or activities or contribution would leave you most fulfilled 5 years from now? How might you spend the next 5 years? And let's assume that we have 5 years. What activity would leave you most fulfilled if you committed wholeheartedly to it? It's also helpful to build a positive future around that next 5 years, around five essential questions, 5 essential issues. What is your mission? What is the life? How would you describe the life you'd most like to live? What goals would you most like to achieve? And goals are dreams with deadlines, dreams with deadlines. What goals that contribute to the mission would you most like to actualize? Third, what resources do you need? Fourth, what feedback and from whom might help you achieve what you want to? And last, what rewards do you hope to get from completing that mission? Mission, goals, feedback, resources, and rewards. I'll give you another example. My mother was a school teacher and elementary school teacher, but she always wanted to get a doctorate. She always felt that getting a doctorate would complete her education. When my parents moved from New York to California, they were living right around where all of us live right now. And she realized that the UC Berkeley campus was available to her. So she got a copy of the Berkeley catalog. She wrote out a curriculum for herself, a list of courses that she called her personal doctoral program. She went around and audited all of those classes over a period of years, audited all of those classes, didn't have to take any tests, didn't have to write any papers, just wanted to sit in on classes. And when she finished, she felt like she completed something that had lurked in her mind for years, this desire to complete a doctoral studies. When I asked her, nobody minded that you just sat in on the class. She said, nobody throws out a little old lady. She had I remember what joy she had in walking around that campus and auditing classes. She completed something that she had been thinking about for years. A third question, what is our model of what it means to grow old, and why are some of our models incomplete? Well, there are essentially two models of aging. See if either one of these fit for you, because there are traps in both of them. There are two models of aging that are most apparent, and they're both incomplete. First is what I call the decline and debilitation model, which says that aging is predominantly negative, and it's characterized by bodily disintegration and cognitive impairment. In other words, you're nowhere near what you used to be and things are falling apart. Although there's certainly a reduction in bodily efficiency and at times mental prowess, many people in later life, as you know from your own experience with your friends and colleagues at Ashby Village, there are many people who are sharp and capable. Things are different than years ago. So it's not just about gloom and doom. It's not just about decline and debilitation. Now, the second model that's just as incomplete is the one that says nothing's changed. Everything is, you're as good as you ever were. And you see people fighting to look the same and to be physically the same and to play tennis as efficiently and to do all those things that suggest to them that nothing has changed. Well, this model denies the actual physical and mental changes that do occur in later life during our wisdom years. What's missing is the potential that exists when we have as many as 40 more years to live this new stage called our wisdom years. When we base our assumptions about growing older on the basics of adulthood, on the previous stage, what we lose is we lose the potential of our wisdom years when we make the assumption that things are the same as during adulthood. We try to continue getting gratification from success and achievement rather than higher values such as gratitude and love and compassion and beauty and justice. What if those higher values undergirded everything you thought and did? That it was no longer about climbing a ladder and getting ahead and being successful, the priorities of adulthood for many of us. Now, a fourth question that really interested me when I wrote the book, when I wrote Our Wisdom Years, Why is the paradigm of active aging or successful aging problematic? Now, you'd think that staying active was good, and I certainly will not come out against being active in later life, but there are some pitfalls that we should pay attention to. Successful or active aging is often problematic in later life because it says, once again, that achievement and success are the bottom line for contentment. Again, this is based on the assumption that our wisdom years are merely an extension of adulthood and ignores the new stage of life that begins around 60. During later life, contentment is no longer based on, as I said, climbing a ladder to achieve ever more challenging goals. Rather, it's based on a life that expresses our higher values, communicates our gratitude for what we've been given and for the journey we've lived, and forgives others and ourselves for whatever transgressions we've experienced. The successful active aging paradigm is based on doing things, while the latter life paradigm of aging is based on answering the question, who is my soul calling me to be? I'm not coming out against activity and staying active and having lots to do that fulfills you, that you enjoy. Of course, that's okay. Don't forget the question, who is my soul now calling me to be? What sort of person do I want to be in my wisdom years? Now, question number 5, and there are 7 questions, so we're moving through this quickly. How can we retrieve forgotten or neglected parts of ourselves? First, ask yourself the question, what or neglect to actualize it? Second, describe your life to actualize the neglected of yourselves. Now, I told the story of my parents, my father in the acting class, my mother in her doctoral program that she conceived of herself. These were things that they thought of, both parents of mine thought about for years and weren't able because they had to work. My mother had to raise a family and work. My father had his job. They weren't able to actualize their first loves, but when they retired, they returned to them. They returned to those neglected parts of themselves. Number 6, how can we be grateful for a life we might regret, for parts of our lives we might regret? The 2 keys to alleviating regret are self-compassion and self-forgiveness. So I would suggest, write a forgiveness letter to yourself that includes the observation that you did the best you could, given who you were and what you knew at the time. You did the best you could, given who you were and what you knew at the time. And then write in the letter what you've learned from what you regret that you'll never do again. Allow yourself to feel the gratitude that comes from letting go of self-recrimination and from learning to be a better person as you learn the lessons that come from regret. 2 of the chapters I really like in the book, I like them all, I guess. They feel like spiritual children in a way. Writing books are a challenge. Those of you who have attempted it know what I mean. It takes a lot of emotional and physical and intellectual energy. But 2 of the chapters I really appreciate are one on life review and one on legacy. I teach people in the life review chapter to go back to times in their past in which they've done things that they found most fulfilling and most meaningful, and what the lessons are in their lives that they want to remember. And then the legacy chapter talks about what do you want to leave behind and to whom. Might be children or grandchildren, it might be other people's children, it might be writing that you leave behind, it might be any kind of project that you hold dear. Life review and legacy, important. Now that really touches on the 7th and last question. How can we leave a legacy that we're proud of? Ask yourself the question, what am I leaving behind for my children, my grandchildren, other people, and the world around me that I'm most proud of? What can I leave behind? Second, what legacy project might I develop? and commit to in later life that will serve as an expression of my higher values? What legacy? It could be art. It could be writing. It could be helping people in whatever way you choose. But based on higher values, as I said, beauty, compassion, justice, service, and love. This legacy project can be as simple as writing a letter to your grandchildren about your life and what values were most important to you. My personal legacy project, as you heard in the introduction, some of you may know Shanti Project. Shanti Project is 46 years old now. Originally, we started taking care of people who were in end-of-life situations, who were dying, usually from cancer. When the AIDS epidemic hit in 1981, we were there. We were the first AIDS support, community support volunteer program in the country. And now with COVID-19 raging, we decided to start a new program that sends volunteers out to assist people with COVID who can't get out. Help them get food, medicines, walk their pets, do whatever else is possible without endangering, of course, the volunteers. I'll always remember the most important part of that legacy project is that it combines the two things that I mentioned initially: love, close relationship with people, support, and work that we're most proud of. It's important to remember that a legacy project doesn't need to be something as grand as Shanti Project. As I said, it could be a letter to your grandchild, a letter to anybody else. It can be simple but generous in spirit. What simple act of kindness makes a difference in your life? Okay. What are you most grateful for in your life? If you and I were having lunch and you asked what questions are most important to ask, I'd summarize everything I said by just suggesting a few basic inquiries. What are you most grateful for in your life? The 2 or 3 things that really matter most. Second, what do you regret most? What are the 2 or 3 things you regret most? And what did you learn from what you regret? What are the 3 most important events in your life? And what have you learned from them? The 3 most important events, and what have you learned from them? Next, what 3 things would you like to pass on to younger generations from your wisdom and experience? Then, who would you like to forgive most in your life and why? Who would you like to forgive most and why? Maybe yourself. And last, and one of my favorite questions, now that you've entered your wisdom years, now that you're in your wisdom years, how is your relationship to God or the mystery or the eternal? How has it changed, if at all? Okay, that's a whirlwind tour of our wisdom years. I'm extremely grateful at the book's reception nationally. If I were to brag a little, I suppose I would say the thing that surprised me, given all the books out there, it was selected by Amazon as the #1 new release in the aging and gerontology category. So it seems like we're speaking to somebody we're speaking to an audience, we're speaking to people who really get that this is a new stage of life with all sorts of possibilities and potentials. Okay, I've talked long enough, I've said lots of things. Let's open up to questions and see what more we can learn from each other.
Does anybody have any questions, comments, or stories that they would like to share from what Dr. Garfield just presented? Charlie, did you have a question?
Yeah, so many good suggestions here that in a way I feel somewhat overwhelmed, right? If I had to feel like I've got some energy but not that much, what are the 2 or 3 things that you think would be most important to put some energy into?
I would ask the 2 questions. I would present the 2 things that I mentioned a number of times. think about relationships. Let's focus on relationships. People you love and love you. What can you do to enhance those relationships? How can you make those relationships more central in your life? Don't let them drift. Don't let the adult priorities, when you were so busy with so many things that seemed so important at the time, overwhelm the possibility of connection with people you might love. And second, what work really makes a difference? What contribution can you make? Not just, busy people always have too much to do. There are always too many things that you might do. Select from all of those things. Here's the way to say it. Don't let the urgent crowd out the important. What's most important? Select what's most important, love and work, and really focus on answering those questions to your satisfaction.
I like that second one especially. It could make a good bumper sticker too. Don't let the urgent crowd out the important.
It is a good bumper sticker.
There's a lot in that that's pithy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Any other
Thank you, Charlie.
questions? We've got plenty of time, so whatever questions people have.
Sarah, you just have to unmute.
Okay, these are wonderful suggestions, and I've made some notes. I have a saging group that's meeting on Friday, so you're coming in at a perfect moment for me. I'm going to be 86, and I share the feeling that Charlie had, and I'm so glad that he asked the question that he did, because it seems as if maybe these lists, however useful they would have been more appropriate 10 years ago than they are at 86. That doesn't mean they aren't important to be said, and I'm so glad your book is doing well. But I just wanted to make that comment and see if you had any comment about that, because it keeps changing every day.
Yeah, I agree. I have a friend who's 92 and who's extremely alive and filled with activity, filled with things that move him and fulfill him. And I asked him, does the book speak to you since you've moved through your apps? Going at a time.
I lost you there for a few minutes.
Hear me?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, repeat the last thing you said, Charlie. The audio went out for half of the sentence or more.
My old friend.
Still no audio. Oh, darn.
Well, it looks like he was having some internet issues. I'm sure he got out and is trying to get back in. So let's give him one more minute.
Sure.
I guess this is time for an intermission, right? So go get some popcorn, take a bio break, do what you need to do.
I can tell you what I do.
Yeah, why don't you, Bob?
Yeah. I'm a founding member of Ashby Village. I came on a member of the board in 2009. And I'm on the Oakland Kaiser Member Advisory Committee. I'm 90 years old. I still drive a car. And what I do, I call my friends every so often just to see how they're getting along. But I maintain contact with these people. And well, after I turned 90, my daughter calls me every night now to see how I'm getting along. And And it's been a wonderful getting to know her better, and vice versa. She gets to know me better. That's what I've done. And I spent a great deal of time working in my home here in Berkeley. And even had a comment from my neighbor the other day who happens to be able to come on my backyard and how much she enjoys my garden. I've worked hard on it this year. So I don't think about how old I am, it's how much I can do. And I'm late getting in here this morning because I broke a tooth out last night, so I had to go to the dentist this morning, and he didn't get through fast enough, and so I'm a little late getting on the program. But I did want to share those little few things that I do, and I walk a mile every night, and so I've kept myself in shape most of my life, and I believe that's why I'm able to do quite a few things that I do today that people in the 60s can't do.
That's very true, Bob. It's very true. Thank you for your comment. I appreciate that. Looks like Dr. Garfield is back.
I'm back.
Good.
Yeah, I really appreciate those last comments because they really summarize some of what I was saying about love and work, relationships with loved ones,
Yes.
and work that really matters to you, work that makes a difference in the lives of other people. Those are the two things that really are the focus that I heard so often from people in their wisdom years, people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, even a few of them over 100.
Does anybody else have a comment, a question, or a suggestion for Dr. Garfield or for the group?
I'll say something if I can get my.
Oh, thanks, Toby. Oh, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself, Toby. There we go.
Am I okay?
You're okay now.
First, thank you very much for telling us all this wonderful advice. I think one of the things I got from your conversation, which I think is really important, I should add, I'm 91, and in thinking back and in evaluating what I'm doing relationship-wise, I sometimes regret some things that I didn't do when I was 60 and 70. And then I realized that I didn't have the wisdom then to act differently, or I was so preoccupied with all the other things. So your comment about forgive yourself really rang true, that when you evaluate what you did during your lifetime, you didn't know then, 30 and 40 years ago, what you know now. And I think that's very important because it helps you to go on and do better in your current existence. So I thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome. You said it beautifully. You said it better than I did. It was a wonderful description of not holding yourself accountable for things you couldn't possibly have known.
I've been doing a great deal of thinking about that in terms of what I did and what I didn't do and should have done, and what I'm doing now for the new group coming up in my family. So that rang very, very deeply and very true. And I thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Toby.
I'll say one thing about Toby. She's been involved with Ashley Village right from the outset.
Well, as long as you, Bob, maybe longer. It's a good place to be.
Well, both of you are a real inspiration.
And speaking of inspiration, you know, I think I feel like our comments have come to a close, and I really want to thank Dr. Garfield for being here today, for sharing his wisdom, for sharing his stories. And I appreciate everybody being here today to listen. And those that made comments, I appreciate you speaking up today. So thank you again for being a part of this. And let's give a nice round of applause to Dr. Garfield. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you. My pleasure. I enjoyed it immensely.
Good. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. And I look forward to seeing you at a future event. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.